Puppet characters are some of the most unique characters in fighting games. Basically, these characters mean you're essentially playing two characters. You have the main character as the puppet master, and then you have some sort of second character or object that they control from afar, making for some complex combos and strategies when you get both characters working in tandem. The puppet is almost always present on the field, showing that this character or item is a pending threat when fighting their primary character. In this video, I'm going to look at the wonderful world of puppetry in fighting games. As mentioned, not all these characters use actual puppets, it's just the name of the fighting style. Some characters take the puppet archetype as literally as they can with their fighting partner, but a puppet in this sense is anything that can be controlled by the primary character fighting, like another person getting directions, a robot, a random item, etc. Now, let's take control of the top 10 puppet characters in fighting games. Number 10, Kate and Sith from Chaos Code. Kate and Sith are siblings who are on a journey to find the legendary Chaos Code so it can revive their father who has been turned into a hat. Don't ask me to elaborate since I don't know either. Regardless of their backstory, these characters are a blast to play. Kate, the brother, takes the lead and will be the main attacker. He'll strategize with his sister Sith where she should attack. There are two main ways of using her, either by having her do a delayed attack that pressures the foe as Kate attacks, or by working in tandem with Kate as he swings her around for some extra hits. When they work as a single unit, it's cool to see what combinations they come up with, mostly doing what I can only describe as dancing, but I like it when they get an air combo going and Kate lands in front of the opponent when they're thrown to the ground, while Sith lands on top of them. Adds a bit of extra sting when the opponent thinks they can stand up without disturbance, and then boom, death from above. Sith gets used as a puppet-style character the most when you position her on screen for a delayed attack. I like the trade-offs that come with it. For attacks where she spins around, it may be strong and allow Kate to get some good combos or setups off of it, but Sith will be out of commission for a bit as she gets dizzy. With other attacks, like where she does a super headbutt, she needs a second to catch her breath afterwards. I always like when there's an in-game visual explanation on why a character has a cooldown period to attacks beyond just saying it's because of balance in a fighting game. I know we don't need realism in a video game, but it adds another layer to the visual spectacle of fighting with this super sibling duo. Number 9, Chang and Choi in Capcom vs SNK 2. Chang and Choi are staples of the King of Fighters games, and they've always just kind of been there. They're not the most prominent characters, but they were there since the first King of Fighters game, and they're partnered with Fatal Fury favorite Kim in his rehabilitation program, so they managed to stay memorable with all that. They're always separate characters in King of Fighters, but when Capcom made their second crossover with SNK, they wanted to include this duo of criminals, but not use multiple roster spots on them, so they just made them one character. Chang is the primary fighter, and he leads Choi to attack alongside him, sometimes just for a quick assist, other times using Choi's wind-up on his claw slashes to create some unique combos when timed correctly. Choi may not be able to relocate himself on screen, as he'll always stay right by Chang's side, but since he has a delay on his special moves as he spins and slashes like a madman, they definitely have some complexities that come with the puppet character archetype. It's funny how Chang is mostly just a Hulk smash sort of character in King of Fighters, relying on short combos with heavy hits, but by adding in a little buddy that's always there, he becomes a lot less linear. There are different routes you can take with his approach now. It's interesting to see. I wish they would bring Chang and Choi back as a duo in one of the King of Fighters games to give us this playstyle again. You would think in a game series where they are constantly on the same team, they would jump in the ring at the same time on occasion. I know it's just 1v1 in the ring as teammates and they wait to get tagged in, but these guys seem like they would not follow the rules. Maybe them fighting on the field at the same time is just what happens when law-abiding citizen Kim Capwan is not leading them on a team. Thank you, Capcom, for giving Chang and Choi this opportunity. Number 8, Shadow Labris from Persona 4 Arena. Persona 4 Arena is full of puppet characters when you think about it. You control your human character, who also controls a persona, the manifestation of their fighting spirit in a humanoid body, so it does follow the description of the puppet archetype, minus the persona always being present on the field. However, one character that goes with the tradition of having both characters present on the screen for the puppet archetype is Shadow Labris. Unlike the other fighters who only have their persona appear when being used and fade away when they're not needed, Shadow Labris's Hell Demon thing is always next to her, regardless of if she calls for him or not. She's probably the most conventional puppet user in the game. Her demon is just standing there, menacingly. He's also very angry. He moves slowly, where you can see him gradually getting ready to punch you, but despite how telegraphed that attack is, there's seemingly nothing you can do since there's a girl with an axe hitting you in the face while he's charging up his attack. He just plays the waiting game while Shadow Labris commands him. All that evil aura can't speed him up. Maybe he's held back by all his pent-up aggression because he gets so intense that he breaks the screen when he's allowed to let loose. They were gonna get hurt regardless, you don't have to cause property damage in the meantime. That being said, I love when he does not dial it back for Shadow Labris's win poses. He's like, no, we must stay intense. Number 7. Latte from Arcana Heart. Latte is a known murderer with a creepy doll. She's right out of a horror movie. She kills with no remorse, but like with most characters, if you get to know her, she's not so bad. That being said, you have to make the effort to get to know her, or else she'll have no problem killing you to get the job done. She bottles up her emotions as a coping mechanism since she thought her direct family was killed. Her sister, who she seemed to love the most of all, was memorialized with her puppet, who was named after the sister. Some say her sister's soul controls that very puppet to this day when she fights, others just say it's Latte's psychic power. Considering we learned her sister was later alive as the character Xenia, it appears to be the latter, but at least the story has a not bad ending. Still, she fights the same way before and after learning this. Up close, she hits you with her giant suitcase, which is heavy enough to hurt anyone on impact. But the real surprise is what's inside, and I'm pretty sure you already know what that is. Her puppet doesn't have any legs, so it just crawls around. You would think that would be a detriment to its mobility, but that thing rolls around like a heavy-duty tire and it just makes it creepier. It's got some claws too, so it clearly kept its more important limbs here. I like how when she still has the puppet in its case, her attacks are different, where the doll will pop out for an extra attack before it closes back up again. So whether you keep the puppet in its case or take it out for those better pressure options, the mystery of her suitcase will not stay a secret for long. Number 6. Viola from Soul Calibur. Viola is the only entry on this list that fights on a 3D plane, so it appears it took nearly 2 decades of fighting games until a 3D fighter finally got a puppet. Who would have guessed? Unless I'm forgetting someone. Viola is a complex character who is acrobatic up close and uses a claw for some extra damage, but that's not her main weapon. In a game where everyone uses cold steel to fight, Viola makes her primary weapon a crystal ball. It goes with how she's a fortune teller of sorts. She sets up the ball on stage and calls it back to her mid-combo when she has her opponent in a daze up close, or maybe she calls it back to start the combo, or puppets it around to interrupt her foe when they're trying to get in. It's very versatile, and it makes for some cool looking combos. Her best attacks are when she lets the ball just rotate around her and she can walk forward like, yeah, what you gonna do? Her backstory on why she's using this ball, though, is unclear. Soul Calibur 5 unfortunately had a weak story that didn't go into much detail for many of the new characters, so she was just a girl who lost her memories who was constantly spouting ominous things.
The moon will swallow the sun, and it will never never rise again.
The big implication is that she was Amy from the previous games, and we were supposed to find out how she got amnesia, but with the rushed story, she mostly just amounted to being that quiet stoic girl with a ball who stood off to the side. Still fun to play though. Even though the timeline was rebooted in Soul Calibur 6, Amy's story showed that she may be back someday with her unique fighting crystal ball. Honestly, the only boring thing about her fighting style is that her puppet has no eye-catching features on default, just being a ball, though you can make it a fishbowl or Terminator skull, so that can be remedied.
Time for bed. Now sleep right.
KO.
I don't care whether you live or die.
Number 5. Devo in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Heritage for the Future. This is a similar situation to Persona 4 Arena, but JoJo's is the mother of all Persona concepts, aka internal fighting spirit creating a fighter plotline, or I could just say stand. I think everyone knows what a stand is by now, so it can claim this idea. The 90s JoJo's fighting game could classify nearly every character as a puppet fighter with the way they implemented stands, but one character goes above and beyond by having their stand possess a puppet, Devo. In the manga and anime, he uses his stand Ebony Devil to curse the opponent when they injure him by having it possess a nearby inanimate object. He makes sure his puppet is nearby when prepared, and then proceeds to have it use razor blades and a spear in attempts to torment and or kill when possessing it, specifically on Polnareff, but Capcom saw these scenes and was like, let's make this a fighting game character and have him do that on everyone. While Devo wasn't really designed to be a fighter in the source material, Capcom managed to take some of the puppet's torture methods and just make him a master of sharp objects. Devo himself barely did anything in the series, so he just kind of mindlessly swings his limbs around until he has enough stand meter to awaken his puppet, and then the two of them can just go to town. The fact that Capcom took a character who basically amounted to nothing except a brief yet cool thriller plotline and made them into a creative fighter is why I hope we can get another Capcom-style JoJo's fighting game someday. And I want every minor character imaginable. Do something with Leaky Eye Luca, make Superfly work, and why not put in Suzy Q when possessed by AC/DC? Perfect roster. Number 4. Chaos from Under Night in Birth. Chaos is a meticulous planner. He's more of an office guy who prefers to get the spreadsheets done and do research online rather than work in the field, so he's not really into fighting. He just wants to get it over with, which is why he employs the help of someone else, or more, something else. His main goal is learning about what lurks in the dark, which are creatures called voids. If they attack you and you survive, you get supernatural powers, which happen to Chaos. In fact, the creature that Chaos commands is one of the voids. But how can he control it? Well, because he's a badass, or because he has a spellbook from a source that knows more about the voids, but regardless, he has full control of his lizard friend, and that's where the puppet character comes into play. It mostly does giant reptile things, clawing at you, biting, tail whipping, things you would expect from it when it starts to charge at you. It also has a surprise dark energy attack, but its most daring ability is teleporting. With Chaos's buddy, 1 second he could be right by his side, and then boom, across the stage, and then he slashes at you. Despite how terrifying a void is supposed to be in this series, Chaos did a good job of making it look like a friendly pet who just needs a bit of discipline. Number 3. Zato 1 and Eddie from Guilty Gear. With the power of the forbidden arts, Zato performed a ritual on himself that would allow him to control his own shadow in exchange for his eyesight. He did this to become the top assassin in his guild, and it worked, for the most part. He can now manipulate his shadow to turn into drills in the swords, making for the ultimate Swiss Army knife of doom. But who's really the puppet in this scenario? While Zato willingly let his shadow gain life, his shadow Eddie acquired full sentience and wanted wanted to be the one in control once it realized what was going on. Eddie eventually started doing his own thing, but still saw value in Zato, so he stuck around, even after Zato himself eventually died. When Zato was killed, Eddie looked around for a new host while puppeteering Zato's body as if it was alive, which was very apparent from the game art since Zato has poor posture now. But hey, people find a blonde guy who's constantly slouching more trustworthy than an amorphous shadow man with red glowing eyes. Eddie eventually dies too since he didn't have a living host for a while, but thanks to the power of magic, they're both alive after that plotline, and now they can fight together like the old days. While fighting, Eddie stays by Zato's side for general melee attacks, but when they're feeling risky, Eddie can be released to run around on his own. He has a meter that allows him to roam free when it's not depleted, so pick the best time to leave Zato alone and have Eddie go ham. With this mechanic, you get the classic puppet playstyle of putting a massive amount of pressure on the opponent as Zato jumps in while Eddie makes it so they have to avoid an array of impediments. He can turn into a land shark. Talk about having to watch your toes. So besides the fun playstyle, Eddie's creativity with his various shapes is more than enough reason to love this duo.
Zato win straight.
Number 2, Carl Clover from BlazBlue. Carl's puppet is a robot who's also his sister. Wait, context. I went into his story in my Families in Fighting Games video, but basically, Carl's antagonistic father Relius had plans to use an existing robot called Nirvana and give it sentience by using his own daughter's soul. It apparently didn't work, so he just abandoned the project, but Carl, who loved his sister, found her in this state and revived her in attempts to get her sentience back. While it appeared to be locked behind the robot, he was able to break through a few times to give us hope that his mission would one day be successful. In the meantime, he uses her to help him fight evil as a vigilante. Carl experiences more shades of gray though when he learns of his father's true nature and that he's the only one who can reverse the state of his sister, or so he says. It makes for the conflict of, does he abandon his father, kill him, join him? It's up in the air. Carl's fighting style starts with what's behind his cape, which is a series of old-fashioned robot buddies that do all his melee attacks for him. But the real appeal of fighting with Carl is using his robot sister. By using any of Carl's drive commands, Nirvana, or Ada to go with her birth name, activates, and she starts swiping at wherever she is on screen. She does not move on her own either, so part of these commands also involve retrieving her from her idle position or where you left her last. She'll mostly just slug ya, but Ada still pulls out surprises on occasion, like her extendo fingers or ball of unspecified energy, though my favorite moves are just where she gets physical. I wasn't expecting this robot to chokeslam me today, but here we are. I do hope she gets her humanity back someday, but for now, keep on throwing down. Honorable mentions: Rosalina in Super Smash Bros., Forceburn from Rivals of Aether, Palm from Them's Fighting Herds, and Minot's Orbs from Street Fighter V, to an extent. When I asked my friends Professor Oats and Corgine about this topic, we came up with a bunch of potential characters, most of which made this list, and these were the ones right on the edge. It was a toss-up on who would make it in, so some of them were a lot closer than you may think. For number 1, I chose the character that I think was the most creative of all the entries, and sometimes that's all you need to be considered best in my book. Number 1, Miss Fortune from Skullgirls. At first glance, you might be thinking, where's the puppet? I don't see it anywhere on screen. She's not summoning anything. Well, the puppet is her own head. Miss Fortune removes her head and controls it from anywhere on the screen. She can throw her head at the opponent for an attack, and the fun begins from there. The head can be used as an impediment to disrupt the opponent trying to get in, or be coordinated to get some complex combos going on as she bounces, bites, and bats the head around. I like how her allergies act up, specifically when the head is removed and it just so happens to work like an attack.
positively delightful.
The cool thing about the body is that it almost plays exactly the same without the head. Moves that use the head when it's connected are turned into various claw maneuvers, like replacing a headbutt with a hand drill when headless. And then when she's done with the headless combos, she can just call it back to her body, but you still have to risk leaving her open when she does that. You may be thinking, why not just leave the head off all the time? There seems to be a clear advantage of having the head across the screen. Well, cleverly, since the head is still a part of herself, it takes half damage from her own health bar when it's hit, so the head puppet is still a liability if you make the wrong move or can't get in close enough when the opponent is wailing on the defenseless head. Most puppets just have their own health bar or mechanics that don't affect the primary character when the puppet is hit, so it was a logical and unique design choice that encourages a mix of rushdown and puppet shenanigans with Miss Fortune. Another logical decision with her character design is that the head does not always get detached willingly. No, it does not randomly fall off, but if she's hit in certain ways, like by a snapback when she's the only character left on her team, she'll not only be hit backwards, but her head will fall off. So if you just prefer playing Rushdown Miss Fortune, too bad, you're playing headless now. The story reason that she can remove her head is that her gang of thieves stole the life gem, which could grant immortality. This was in possession by the Mafia at the time though, so stealing from them resulted in the gang's assassination. The Mafia chopped them up after killing them and threw them to the bottom of a river. However, the Mafia was unaware that Miss Fortune had already eaten the life gem for safekeeping before they did that, and now the power of immortality runs through her veins. Since she was chopped up but kept alive by the gem's power, it meant she could now disconnect and reconnect her body at the points where she was cut, including the head. She was able to pull herself back together, swim ashore, and now she makes a living by giving worldly advice, beating up goons, and making puns. The puns are either you love them or you hate them, but I love them since character interactions are fun.
Claws encounter of the third kind.
So with the removable head that's also a puppet that's also a pun factory, Miss Fortune claws her way to the top of this list.
I win, I win, I win, I win, I win.
So close!
Now, what did you think? Who were your favorite puppets and puppeteers that we discussed, and who had the strings that held them down on this list? Did we accidentally ignore any? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.